I'm standing outside the door to the bridal suite, bouquet in hand, about to step in and see the woman I thought I'd spend forever with. The laughter stops me, Jessica's unmistakable giggle, but there's something sharper, colder, in her tone. "I can't believe he fell for it," she says, her voice carrying through the crack in the door. My chest tightens as I lean closer, barely breathing. This summer trip is going to be epic. Mark is such a pushover. He thinks I'm actually staying faithful. "Jess, you're terrible," one of her friends says between gasps of laughter. Their voices blur into the background as my mind spins. For months, I'd ignored the late-night texts, the canceled plans, and the way she'd brush off my questions with a kiss and a sweet smile. I wanted to believe in her. But now, her words carve through me, turning everything I thought we had into a cruel joke. I push open the door, and their laughter dies instantly. Jessica's smile freezes when she sees my face. "Mark," she says, her tone suddenly sweet and innocent. "I thought you weren't supposed to see me before the ceremony." I hold up the bouquet, the flowers trembling in my grip. "I guess I'm breaking another rule, Jess. Like you've been breaking my trust." Her friends scatter, leaving us alone. Jessica's face morphs from shock to indignation. "What are you talking about?" "Don't play dumb," I say, my voice low and even, though my hands are shaking. "I heard you. Every word." For a moment, she tries to recover, her lips curving into that smile that used to melt me. But this time, it only fuels my anger. "Mark, you're being dramatic. It was just girl talk." "Girl talk?" I scoff. "About lying to me? About cheating on me?" She crosses her arms, the veneer of sweetness crumbling into exasperation. "Fine. So I need a little space. Is that a crime? A little space?" I repeat, my voice rising. "You're supposed to be my fiancée, Jessica. We're getting married today." Jessica rolls her eyes. "Maybe you should have taken a hint. You're so boring, Mark. All you ever talk about is your farm, your plans." It's suffocating. The finality of her words hits like a blow. "If that's how you feel," I say, stepping back, "then consider this over." Her eyes widen in shock. "Wait, you don't mean—" "I do," I say, my voice firm. "But not to you." I turn and walk out, leaving her stunned. Each step away from that room feels like a weight lifting from my chest. I don't have all the answers yet, but I know one thing. I deserve better than this. The drive home feels like a blur. My phone vibrates endlessly in the passenger seat, Jessica's name lighting up the screen each time. I don't bother answering. What's left to say? The memory of her words, mocking, dismissive, and cruel, plays on a loop in my head. The woman I thought I knew, the future I'd envisioned, all gone in a single moment of clarity. I pull into the driveway of our shared apartment. The sight of the place makes my stomach turn. I can't stay here, surrounded by the reminders of her betrayal. I need to clear my head, figure out what comes next. Once inside, I grab a beer from the fridge and sink into the couch, hoping the numbness will dull the edge of my anger. My phone buzzes again, but this time it's not Jessica. It's a notification from a private account. Curious, I open it. Photos flood my screen. Jessica, arm in arm with a man I don't recognize. His cocky smile matches hers as they pose together on what looks like a beach. Each image confirms my worst fears. The dates on the photos line up perfectly with her supposed girls' trips. My grip tightens on the phone until my knuckles ache. There's more. A short video clip follows. Jessica sits beside him at a restaurant, leaning in close. She laughs, carefree, before stealing a kiss. The betrayal cuts deep, sharper than I imagined. My heart pounds as anger boils over. I forward the evidence to my email and save it to a secure folder. If she thinks she can walk back into my life with excuses and apologies, she's dead wrong. I won't let her rewrite the narrative. The door clicks open behind me, and I tense. Jessica strides in, her face a mix of annoyance and feigned concern. "Mark, this is ridiculous. Can we just talk?" I stand, shoving my phone into my pocket. "There's nothing to talk about." "Don't be so dramatic," she snaps, her hands on her hips. "You're overreacting to a stupid joke." "A joke?" I spit the words like venom. Is that what you call cheating? I saw the photos, Jessica. The videos. How long has this been going on? Her face pales for a moment, but she recovers quickly, her voice turning defensive. I didn't mean for you to find out this way. I bark a bitter laugh. That's your defense? Not that you didn't cheat, but that I found out. She steps closer, her tone softening. Mark, listen. It didn't mean anything. I was just, I don't know, feeling stuck. I needed a break, that's all. A break? I step back, shaking my head. You could have talked to me, Jessica. You could have been honest. But you chose to lie, to betray me. Tears well in her eyes, but I don't let them sway me. I've seen this act before. I can change, she pleads. We can fix this. Please, Mark, don't throw away everything we've built. Her words land hollow. You already threw it away. I say, my voice steady. This isn't something I can forgive. Her tears spill over, but I turn away, grabbing my jacket. Pack your things, Jessica. You can stay here tonight, but I want you gone by morning. Her sobs echo behind me as I step outside, the cool night air biting my skin. I don't know where I'm going, but anywhere is better than here. As I walk down the street, I feel a strange mix of pain and relief. This chapter of my life is over, and it's time to turn the page. The next morning, the apartment is eerily quiet. Jessica must have taken me at my word. Her things are gone, the closets emptied of her clothes, the bathroom cleared of her endless beauty products. All that's left is a faint trace of her perfume lingering in the air. It's suffocating, like the last reminder of a life I'm ready to leave behind. I move methodically, boxing up anything else she left behind. Jewelry, old photos, the souvenirs from trips I now realize were never about us. Each item feels like another weight lifted as I pack them away, sealing the memories in tape and cardboard. There's no sadness, only determination. I load the boxes into the truck, knowing exactly where they're going, her parents' house. The drive feels longer than it should. I pull up to the neat, white house, the one where Jessica and I had spent countless holidays. Her mom answers the door, her face falling when she sees me standing there, boxes in hand. Mark, what's going on? She asks, concern lacing her voice. She's moving on, I reply flatly. And so am I. Her father appears behind her, his brows furrowed. What happened? I hesitate for a moment, considering how much to reveal. Ask her, I finally say. She knows the whole story. They step aside as I carry the boxes inside. Her mom touches my arm as I head back to the truck. I'm so sorry, Mark. You've always been like family. I force a polite nod, but the truth is, I'm done with this family. I climb into the truck and drive off without looking back. My next stop is my apartment. I grab the essentials, stuffing them into duffel bags. Clothes, tools, and a few keepsakes. The rest can wait. It's not like anyone else is going to need the space. My destination is clear, a small, secluded farm I inherited from my grandfather. It's been sitting idle for years, but now it feels like the perfect escape. No memories of Jessica, no neighbors asking awkward questions, just peace and quiet, and the chance to rebuild from the ground up. By mid-afternoon, I'm pulling onto the dirt road that leads to the property. The old farmhouse stands at the end of the drive, weathered but sturdy. The land stretches out around it, wild and untamed. It's a far cry from the polished city life Jessica always insisted we needed. But to me, it feels like freedom. I unpack in silence, taking stock of what I'll need to get started. The barn needs repairs, the fences are falling apart, and the house itself could use a fresh coat of paint. It's overwhelming, but in a way, it's exactly what I need. A project to pour myself into, something to keep my mind and hands busy. As the sun sets, I sit on the porch with a cold beer, staring out at the open fields. The air is crisp, the quiet broken only by the occasional rustle of leaves. For the first time in days, I feel a flicker of peace. This is my chance to start over, to reclaim a life that's mine and mine alone. Tomorrow, the work begins. Tonight, I let the weight of the past settle and prepare to leave it behind. The next morning, I wake up to the sound of birdsong filtering through the old wooden shutters. It's been years since I've slept anywhere so quiet, and for a moment, I'm disoriented, my body still expecting the hum of traffic outside the apartment or Jessica's sharp voice calling from the other room. But then I remember, I'm here alone, and this is where I need to be. The farmhouse is a relic from another time. The floors creak under my weight, and the plumbing groans when I turn on the tap. Dust covers every surface, a reminder that this place has been waiting for someone to breathe life back into it. I roll up my sleeves and start with the basics, scrubbing the counters, sweeping the floors, and throwing open the windows to let in the cool morning air. By noon, I've moved outside, surveying the property. The barn leans slightly to one side, its roof sagging under the weight of years. The fields are overgrown, while grasses and weeds reclaiming what was once neatly plowed rows. It's daunting, but it also feels like a challenge, a chance to rebuild, piece by piece. I grab the toolbox from my truck and head to the barn. The old wooden doors resist at first, but with a shove, they creak open, revealing a dusty interior filled with cobwebs and remnants of my grandfather's life. Rusted tools, faded photographs, and broken machinery are scattered across the space. I set to work, clearing out what's beyond saving and organizing what can be repaired. Hours pass, my hands covered in dirt and grease. Sweat drips down my face, but I don't stop. The physical labor is cathartic, each swing of the hammer and turn of the wrench driving out the anger and pain still lodged in my chest. By the time the sun dips low in the sky, I've made progress. It's small, but it's mine, and that's enough. As I sit on the tailgate of my truck, drinking a bottle of water and watching the sunset, a thought strikes me. Jessica wouldn't have lasted a day out here. The realization brings a faint smile to my face. This is where I belong. Not in her world of fancy dinners and social games, but here, where the only competition is with myself. The next few days follow a similar rhythm. I wake with the sun and work until my muscles ache, tackling one project at a time. The house begins to feel like a home again. The barn starts to regain its shape, and the fields look less like chaos and more like potential. It's not easy, but every step forward feels like reclaiming a part of myself. It's late one evening when I hear the sound of a truck pulling up the drive. My first thought is that it's someone lost, looking for directions, but when I step out onto the porch, I see a woman climbing out of the driver's seat. She's tall, with short cropped hair and a no-nonsense demeanor that reminds me of a drill sergeant. "Hey," she calls out, her voice carrying over the distance. "You the new guy?" I nod, wiping my hands on my jeans as I approach. "Mark," I say, extending a hand. "Rachel," she replies, shaking it firmly. "I live over the hill. Saw the lights on and figured I'd come say hello." Her handshake is strong, her gaze steady. There's something about her that feels different, grounded, unflinching. For the first time since coming here, I don't feel quite so alone. "Welcome to the middle of nowhere," she says with a smirk. "Hope you're ready for it." "I think I am," I reply, and for the first time in a long while, I mean it. Rachel leans against the hood of her truck, studying me like she's sizing up a new recruit. There's a quiet confidence about her, the kind that doesn't demand attention but earns it naturally. She glances at the barn, her sharp eyes taking in the freshly patched roof and the pile of debris I'd hauled out earlier. "You've been busy," she says, nodding toward the barn. "This place was a wreck last time I saw it." "It still is," I reply with a shrug, "but I'm getting there." She smirks, a flash of amusement in her otherwise serious demeanor. "You working alone?" "For now," I say, crossing my arms. "It's just me and the land." Rachel nods, like she understands. Sometimes that's all you need. Her words hang in the air, heavy with unspoken meaning. I notice the way she carries herself, not just with confidence, but with a kind of guardedness, like someone who's seen her share of battles. There's a faint scar along her jawline, barely noticeable, but it hints at a story she's not ready to tell. "What brings you out here?" I ask, breaking the silence. She jerks a thumb toward the ridge in the distance. "My family's farm is over there. Been running it since my dad passed a few years back. Figured I'd check in on the new neighbor." "Well, thanks for stopping by," I say, feeling awkward under her gaze. "I wasn't expecting company." Her smirk widens into a grin. I'll take that as a compliment. We talk for a while, the conversation easy despite her guarded nature. She tells me about her family farm, how she's been running it mostly alone since her brother moved to the city. I find myself opening up, sharing bits and pieces of my own story. Not about Jessica, that's still too raw, but about the farm, my grandfather, and why I decided to start over here. Rachel listens without judgment, nodding occasionally, but never pressing for more than I'm willing to share. It's a relief, having someone who doesn't need every detail to understand the weight of what I've been through. As the sun dips lower, casting long shadows across the fields, Rachel straightens and brushes the dust from her jeans. Well, I should get going, she says, heading back to her truck. But if you ever need a hand, or just a break, stop by the creek on my property. Best spot around for clearing your head. I'll keep that in mind, I reply, watching as she climbs into the truck and starts the engine. She gives me a two-fingered salute as she pulls away, the rumble of her truck fading into the distance. For the first time in days, I feel a spark of something I can't quite name. Maybe it's hope, or maybe it's just the realization that I'm not as isolated as I thought. That night, as I sit on the porch with a beer in hand, I think about Rachel's offer. The creek sounds like a good idea, a place to think, to breathe, and maybe even to start letting go of the past. Tomorrow, I'll keep working on the farm, but soon, I'll take her up on that invitation. The next few days blur into one long stretch of labor. The farm demands all of my focus, and that's just the way I want it. I spend my mornings repairing fences, afternoons clearing the fields, and evenings tinkering with the barn's old machinery. It's exhausting, but the steady rhythm of work keeps my mind from wandering to darker places. On the third day, I decide to take Rachel up on her suggestion. After finishing a section of fencing, I throw a towel over my shoulder and head toward the ridge she pointed out. The hike is short but steep, the path winding through tall grass and wildflowers. When I crest the hill, I see it. A crystal-clear creek cutting through the land, shaded by a canopy of trees. It's as if the world has paused here, serene and untouched. Rachel's already there, sitting on a large rock with her boots off and her feet dangling in the water. She glances over her shoulder as I approach, a smile tugging at the corner of her mouth. "Didn't think you'd show," she says, gesturing for me to sit. "I needed a break," I reply, dropping onto the rock beside her. The coolness of the creek is immediate and refreshing as I dip my boots in. We sit in comfortable silence for a while, listening to the babble of the water and the rustle of leaves in the breeze. It's the first time in weeks that I felt truly relaxed, like the weight on my chest has lightened just a bit. "So," Rachel says eventually, her tone casual, "what's the story with you? Most people don't just up and move to the middle of nowhere without a reason." I hesitate, staring at the ripples in the water. Let's just say things didn't work out where I was. She nods, as if that answer is enough. I get it. Sometimes you need a clean slate. What about you? I ask, how'd you end up here? Her gaze drifts to the creek, her expression unreadable. I came back after my last deployment. Dad was sick, and someone had to take care of the farm. Deployment? I echo. Rachel looks at me, her eyes guarded but not unkind. Army. 2 tours in Afghanistan. Got out a few years ago. There's a weight to her words, a quiet strength that makes me respect her even more. That must have been tough. It was, she admits, but it made me who I am. And now, this farm? It's my piece. I nod, understanding more than I can say. This place feels like that for me too. We fall into another silence, but it's not uncomfortable. There's a mutual understanding between us, unspoken but tangible. We're both rebuilding in our own ways, and somehow that makes this moment feel significant. Rachel stands, brushing off her jeans. Well, Mark, it's been real, but I've got chores waiting for me back home. Thanks for the invite, I say, genuinely grateful. She smirks. Don't make it a one-time thing. The creek's good for the soul. I watch her go, the sound of her boots crunching on the gravel fading as she disappears over the ridge. Sitting there alone, I feel something I haven't felt in a long time. Hope. Maybe this place, this life, has more to offer than just solitude. And maybe, just maybe, Rachel is part of that. The sun is setting as I finish, securing the last section of fencing. I'm dirty, tired, but content. The farm is slowly starting to look like something I can be proud of again. As I pack up my tools and head toward the house, the distant hum of a car engine pulls my attention. I frown. It's rare to get visitors this far out. The car pulls up the gravel driveway, kicking up a cloud of dust. The sleek black sedan is out of place here, too polished for the rugged countryside. And when the door opens, my stomach drops. Jessica steps out, her face a mask of regret and determination. She's dressed impeccably, as always, but there's something different about her. Her posture, the way she hesitates before closing the car door. Her hands cradle her stomach, and it doesn't take me long to realize why. She's pregnant. "Mark," she calls out, her voice soft but insistent. "Can we talk?" I cross my arms and lean against the porch railing, keeping my expression neutral. "What are you doing here, Jessica?" She walks closer, her steps tentative. "I needed to see you. It's important." I don't reply, and she takes that as her cue to keep talking. "I've made mistakes," she says, her voice trembling. "I know that, but I've been doing a lot of thinking, and I realized I miss you." Her words hang in the air, but I don't let them sink in. "You miss me?" I repeat, my tone dripping with disbelief. "What part? The part where you cheated, or the part where I walked away from you?" Jessica flinches, but her resolve doesn't waver. "I know I hurt you, Mark. I was selfish, and I didn't appreciate what we had. But I've changed. I want to fix things." I shake my head, the bitterness rising in my chest. "And the baby? Is it mine?" Her eyes widen in shock. "No, of course not. It's someone else's. But that's not the point. I need stability, Mark. I need someone I can rely on." I laugh, the sound harsh and humorless. "You mean you need someone to clean up your mess?" "It's not like that," she protests, tears brimming in her eyes. "I know I don't deserve another chance, but I'm asking for one anyway. Please, Mark. I want us to be a family." Her words cut deep, but not in the way she intends. They don't stir longing or regret. They remind me of how far I've come since leaving her. I straighten, my voice steady as I deliver the truth. "You're right, Jessica. You don't deserve another chance. I gave you everything, and you threw it away. I've moved on, and you should too." Tears stream down her face now, but I don't feel pity. "Please," she whispers, her voice breaking. I shake my head, stepping back toward the door. "Go home, Jessica. Whatever you're looking for, it's not here." I close the door before she can respond, leaning against it as I take a deep breath. My hands are shaking, but not from regret, from relief. For the first time, I feel like I've truly closed that chapter of my life. The sound of tires crunching on gravel fades into the distance, and I walk to the kitchen, pouring myself a glass of water to steady my nerves. A knock on the door startles me, but when I open it, it's not Jessica. It's Rachel. "Everything okay?" she asks, her sharp eyes scanning my face. I nod, managing a small smile. "Yeah, it is now." Her gaze lingers for a moment before she nods. "Good. If you need anything, you know where to find me." "Thanks, Rachel," I say, meaning it more than she knows. As she walks away, I feel a strange sense of calm settle over me. Jessica may have returned, but Rachel is the one who's stayed, and that makes all the difference. The following morning, I'm out in the fields, clearing brush and tending to the rows I've started planting. The work is grounding, but my mind drifts back to the confrontation with Jessica. Her return rattled me more than I'd like to admit, though I'm determined not to let her linger in my thoughts. As the sun climbs higher, I hear the distant crunch of tires on gravel again. My body tenses until I recognize Rachel's old truck pulling up. She steps out, wearing her usual work boots and jeans, her expression serious. "Morning," she calls, walking over with an easy stride. But as she gets closer, I notice the way her jaw is set. She's carrying something heavy on her mind. "What's up?" I ask, wiping the sweat from my brow. "Jessica," she says, crossing her arms. "She showed up at my place." My stomach drops. "What?" Rachel nods, her gaze unwavering. "She came looking for me after she left here. Thought she could get me to back off, or convince me to help her get you back. I let out a bitter laugh. That sounds like Jessica. Rachel smirks, but there's an edge to it. I didn't hold back, Mark. Told her exactly what I thought of her trying to weasel her way back into your life after what she did. What did she say? I ask, both curious and dreading the answer. Rachel shrugs, her tone cool but resolute. She tried the whole sob story routine. How she's changed, how she wants what's best for you. I told her that if she really cared about you, she wouldn't have cheated in the first place. Hearing Rachel's fierce defense of me sends a strange warmth through my chest. I've never had someone stand up for me like this. Not in a way that feels so genuine, so unshakable. She didn't take it well, Rachel continues, shaking her head, called me some choice names, and stormed off. But I doubt she'll be bothering you again anytime soon. Thanks, Rachel, I say, my voice softer than I intended. You didn't have to do that. She shrugs again, but there's a flicker of something vulnerable in her eyes. You deserve better than someone like her. I wasn't about to stand by and let her drag you back into that mess. For a moment, we just stand there, the unspoken connection between us stronger than words. I realize how much her support means to me, how her presence has become a steadying force in my life. Let me buy you a beer, I offer, breaking the silence. It's the least I can do. Rachel smirks, the tension in her shoulders easing. You've got yourself a deal, but only if I get to pick the brand. We spend the rest of the afternoon at the creek, beers in hand and conversation flowing easily. Rachel talks about her time in the Army, the struggles of running her family's farm, and her dreams for the future. I share more about my grandfather's legacy and my plans for rebuilding the land. By the time the sun starts to set, I feel lighter than I have in months. Rachel leans back against a tree, her eyes on the horizon. You're going to be okay, you know, she says, her voice steady. Yeah, I reply, and for the first time, I truly believe it. As we head back to our respective farms, I can't help but feel like Jessica's return, while painful, has solidified something important. It's not just about moving on. It's about finding someone who stands with you, not against you. And Rachel has done just that. A week passes in a blur of work and quiet moments at the creek. Rachel and I fall into an easy rhythm, meeting every other evening, sharing beers and stories, letting the burdens of our pasts dissolve into the sound of rushing water. It's unspoken, but we both know something deeper is beginning to take root. One evening, as we sit by the creek, Rachel's mood shifts. She's quieter than usual, staring at the water with a distant look. I wait, sensing she needs time to find her words. Finally, she speaks. You ever feel like you're carrying a weight you can't put down? Her question catches me off guard, but I nod. Every day, I say honestly, you? Yeah. She glances at me, her eyes flickering with something raw and vulnerable. It's not just the farm or the memories of Afghanistan. It's me, the person I became because of everything I've been through. I lean forward, resting my arms on my knees. You're one of the strongest people I've ever met, Rachel. That's not a bad thing. She chuckles, but it's bitter. Strength isn't all it's cracked up to be. Sometimes it feels like a shield I can't take off. Like I don't know how to be soft anymore. Her words stir something in me. I've seen the toughness she wears, the way she keeps people at a distance, and I wonder if it's as much a defense as it is a part of who she is. You don't have to be anything but yourself, I say. Not with me. She looks at me, and for a moment, the shield cracks. What if I don't know who that is anymore? Then we figure it out, I reply. Together. The words hang between us, heavy with meaning. She studies me, her eyes searching mine as if trying to decide whether to believe me. Then, slowly, she nods. Okay, she says softly. Together. The vulnerability of that moment shifts something between us. It's no longer just about friendship or camaraderie. It's about trust, about letting someone in even when it scares you. Later that night, as we walk back to our trucks, Rachel hesitates. Mark, she says, her voice quiet. Thanks for not pushing. I smile, understanding what she means. Anytime. As she drives away, I realize something has changed, not just between us, but within me. For the first time since Jessica, I feel like I'm letting go of the past and making space for something new. The next day, Rachel surprises me by showing up at the farm. She's carrying a small basket of seedlings, her smirk firmly in place. "Thought your fields could use some life," she says, holding the basket out to me. I laugh, taking it from her. "What makes you think I need help?" "Oh, you need help," she teases, following me to the fields. "Besides, I'm not about to let you screw this up on your own." We spend the day planting, her laughter breaking through the quiet as we trade jabs and stories. The work is hard, but with her beside me, it doesn't feel like a burden. By the time we finish, the rows are neat and full of promise, and so is my heart. As we stand side by side, surveying the newly planted field, Rachel bumps my shoulder lightly. "Not bad, farmer." I glance at her, my smile matching hers. Not bad at all. That evening, as we sit on the porch sharing a well-earned beer, I can't help but feel like something is finally beginning to grow. Not just in the fields, but between us. The morning starts like any other. The sky is a pale blue, streaked with golden rays of sunlight, and the air carries the fresh scent of earth after a recent rain. Rachel stops by early, as she's been doing more often, and we work side by side repairing the barn door. Around midday, the wind picks up. It starts as a gentle breeze but quickly turns aggressive, bending the trees along the ridge and rustling the tarp we've stretched over the barn roof. Rachel pauses, wiping her brow and looking toward the horizon. "That doesn't look good," she says, pointing to the darkening clouds rolling in. I follow her gaze, a knot forming in my stomach. The once clear sky has turned ominous, heavy with an unnatural green hue. "Tornado weather," I say, already calculating what needs to be secured. Rachel drops her tools and straightens. "We need to lock everything down. Now." We work quickly, securing the barn and clearing loose debris from the yard. The wind roars louder, carrying with it the smell of rain and something sharper, more metallic. The first drops fall as we sprint to the house, slamming the door just as the storm unleashes its fury. Inside, the walls creak under the strain of the wind. Rachel stands at the window, peering through the glass with narrowed eyes. "It's coming this way," she says, her voice steady but tense. "You got a storm shelter?" "Basement," I reply, grabbing a flashlight from the counter. "Let's go." We descend into the basement, the dim light casting shadows on the concrete walls. The noise above is deafening. The wind howls like a freight train, punctuated by the crash of debris slamming against the house. Rachel sits beside me, her shoulders squared, her calm demeanor a stark contrast to the chaos outside. "You've been through worse, haven't you?" I ask, my voice barely audible over the storm. She glances at me, a faint smile tugging at her lips. "Yeah, but that doesn't mean this doesn't scare the hell out of me." Her honesty surprises me, and I feel an unexpected surge of respect for her. "We'll get through it," I say, my hand brushing hers as I adjust the flashlight. The touch is brief, but it feels significant. The storm rages for what feels like hours, though it's probably no more than 20 minutes. When the wind finally dies down, we sit in the silence, listening for any signs of danger. Rachel is the first to move, heading upstairs to survey the damage. The sight that greets us is devastating. The barn is partially collapsed, its roof torn away. Fallen trees litter the yard, and the freshly planted fields are pockmarked with debris. Rachel's truck, parked near the porch, has a shattered windshield and a dented hood. "Damn," she mutters, running a hand through her hair. "That was a bad one." I step onto the porch, taking in the scene with a sinking heart. The storm may be over, but the work ahead is overwhelming. Looks like we've got our hands full. Rachel turns to me, her expression firm. "You're not doing this alone. I'll call my brother. He can bring some equipment to help clear the debris." I hesitate, but she cuts me off with a wave of her hand. "Don't even try to argue, Mark. This is what neighbors do." The sincerity in her voice leaves me no room for protest. "Thanks, Rachel," I say, meaning it more than she knows. We spend the rest of the day clearing what we can, working in tandem like a well-oiled machine. As the sun sets, casting a golden glow over the wreckage, I realize that the storm hasn't just damaged the farm. it's also revealed something important. Rachel isn't just a neighbor or a friend. She's become a partner, someone I can count on in the hardest of times. And for the first time, I start to believe that rebuilding this farm, this life, isn't something I have to do alone. The days after the tornado are grueling. From dawn until dusk, Rachel and I work side by side to salvage what we can and rebuild what's been lost. Her brother, Matt, shows up with a tractor and a chainsaw, and between the three of us, we make steady progress clearing the debris and repairing the barn. It's backbreaking work, but Rachel doesn't waver. She's there for every beam lifted, every fence post driven into the ground. Her determination is infectious, driving me forward even when my body screams for rest. On the third day, we tackle the barn roof. The sun blazes overhead as we haul sheets of metal into place. Rachel pauses, brushing the sweat from her forehead, and glances at me. "You're lucky this old place didn't collapse entirely," she says, her voice tinged with admiration. "Your granddad built it tough?" "Yeah," I reply, looking at the worn wood beams. "He always said a strong foundation was the key to surviving any storm." Rachel smirks. "Smart man. Guess he passed that wisdom down to you." I shrug, but her words stick with me. As we secure the last section of roofing, I can't help but think about how much has changed since I came to this farm. The storm may have torn apart the land, but it's also solidified something deeper, a sense of purpose, of belonging. By the time we call it a day, the barn is almost fully restored. Rachel and I sit on the porch, sipping cold beers as the sky turns pink with sunset. Her brother waves from his truck as he drives off, leaving us in the quiet of the evening. "You did good today," Rachel says, tipping her bottle toward me. "We did good," I correct, meeting her gaze. Her expression softens, and for a moment, the usual guardedness in her eyes disappears. "You know," she begins, her voice hesitant, "I don't usually stick my neck out for people, but with you, it feels different." I set my beer down, my heart pounding. "Different how?" She looks away, her fingers tightening around the bottle. "I don't know. Like, maybe this farm, this place, it's not just a project for you. It's becoming home. And maybe I'm starting to feel like part of it." Her words hit me harder than I expect. I reach out, placing a hand over hers. "Rachel, you're more than part of this. I couldn't have gotten through any of this without you." She meets my gaze, her eyes shimmering with an emotion she rarely shows. "Mark, a loud crack interrupts her, and we both turn toward the sound. One of the larger branches from the old oak tree has broken under its own weight, landing on the fence we just repaired. Rachel lets out a laugh, breaking the tension. "Guess we're not done yet." I laugh too, shaking my head. Seems like this farm has a way of keeping us busy. As we gather our tools to deal with the fallen branch, I glance at Rachel. She may not have finished her sentence, but I don't need her to. Her actions have spoken louder than any words ever could. She's here, with me, through every challenge, every storm. That night, after the branch is cleared and the tools are put away, Rachel lingers on the porch. The stars are out, bright and clear against the dark sky. "You ever think about what's next?" she asks suddenly, her voice soft. I lean back in my chair, staring up at the stars. All the time, but for the first time in a long while, I'm not afraid of it. Rachel nods, a faint smile tugging at her lips. "Good, because I think what's next is going to be worth it." Her words feel like a promise, one I intend to keep. The weeks that follow bring a rhythm to life on the farm. Rachel and I spend our days working together, our evenings by the creek or on the porch, sharing stories and quiet moments. The scars left by the tornado are healing, both on the land and within us. For the first time in what feels like forever, I'm starting to feel whole again. But life has a way of throwing curveballs when you least expect them. One afternoon, as I'm repairing the tractor, my phone buzzes in my pocket. It's a number I don't recognize, but something about it feels urgent. I wipe the grease from my hands and answer. "Mark Caldwell?" the voice on the other end asks. "Speaking. This is Captain Reynolds from your Army Reserve Unit. We need to activate you for a deployment. Can you report to base within 48 hours? The words hit me like a punch to the gut. It's been years since I've been called up, and though I always knew it was a possibility, it feels sudden, intrusive, like a storm I can't prepare for. Understood, I reply, my voice steady despite the turmoil brewing inside me. I'll be there. When I hang up, Rachel is leaning against the barn door, her brow furrowed. What's going on? I meet her gaze, bracing myself. I've been called up for deployment. I leave in 2 days. She doesn't say anything at first, her face unreadable. Then she steps closer, her voice calm but firm. Okay, what do you need to get ready? Her reaction takes me by surprise. You're not going to try to talk me out of it? She shakes her head. You made a commitment, and I respect that. But you don't have to do this alone. We'll get everything sorted. We spend the next day and a half preparing. Rachel takes meticulous notes as I show her how to operate the equipment, manage the irrigation system, and handle the quirks of the animals. She's a fast learner, her confidence growing with every task. By the time we finish, I'm certain she'll take care of the farm as if it were her own. The morning of my departure arrives too quickly. I pack my gear in silence, the weight of what's ahead pressing heavily on my shoulders. Rachel meets me at the truck, her expression unreadable. You've got this, she says, her voice steady. And so do I. I nod, my throat too tight to speak. She steps closer, placing a hand on my chest. Just promise me one thing, she says, her voice softer now. Come back in one piece. I cover her hand with mine, meeting her gaze. I promise. For a moment, the world narrows to just the two of us, the weight of unspoken words heavy in the air. Then she leans in, pressing a kiss to my cheek. It's brief, almost tentative, but it leaves a warmth that lingers even as I climb into the truck. As I drive away, the farm fades into the distance, but Rachel's strength stays with me. I don't know what the next months will bring, but I do know one thing. I'll be counting the days until I can come back home. The desert heat is relentless, a searing force that beats down on me as I step out of the makeshift barracks. Deployment in Iraq is as challenging as I remember. Long hours, constant vigilance, and the ever-present hum of danger just beyond the horizon. But this time, I feel different. I'm not just a soldier fulfilling a duty. I'm a man with something to fight for, a life to return to. Our unit's mission is straightforward: secure supply routes and assist local communities. It's grueling work, but it has a purpose. Days blur together in a haze of dust and tension. Every patrol brings its own challenges, from negotiating with wary locals to navigating roads laced with IED threats. One evening, as the sun dips below the horizon, we're tasked with escorting a convoy through a known hotspot. I ride in the lead vehicle, scanning the terrain for anything out of place. The atmosphere is thick with anticipation, each soldier on edge. Suddenly, a deafening explosion rocks the convoy. The Humvee behind us is engulfed in flames, the blast throwing debris into the air. Chaos erupts as gunfire rains down from a nearby ridge. Ambush, someone shouts, but I don't need the warning. My training kicks in, adrenaline sharpening my senses as I leap from the vehicle and take cover behind a rocky outcrop. Caldwell, take point. My commanding officer yells over the roar of gunfire. I nod, gripping my rifle tightly as I assess the situation. The attackers are entrenched, using the ridge to their advantage. But they've underestimated us. I signal to my team, directing suppressive fire while I circle around to flank the enemy position. The next few minutes are a blur of movement and noise. Heart pounding, I creep through the shadows, my boots crunching softly against the gravel. When I reach the ridge, I spot the attackers, 4 of them, focused entirely on the firefight below. I steady my aim, taking them out one by one. When the dust settles, the silence is almost deafening. I radio back to my team, signaling the all-clear. The convoy is battered but intact, and we've managed to repel the attack without any further casualties. Back at the base, the commanding officer pulls me aside. Caldwell, he says, his tone gruff but approving. Your quick thinking saved lives out there. I'm putting you in for a commendation. Thank you, sir, I reply, though the recognition feels secondary to the sense of relief coursing through me. I didn't come here for medals. I came to do my job and get back to the life I'm building. That night, I find a quiet moment to write Rachel. It's been weeks since I left, and though our letters are infrequent, they're a lifeline. I tell her about the ambush, not the details, but enough to let her know I'm okay. I tell her I miss the farm, the creek, and the way her laugh can make even the hardest day seem easier. Her reply arrives days later, scrawled in her bold, no-nonsense handwriting. She writes about the farm, how the crops are thriving, how Matt helped repair the final section of fencing. She jokes about a nosy cow that keeps wandering into the wrong pasture and ends with a simple but powerful line. Come home soon. We need you. Her words stay with me through the remainder of the deployment. They ground me, reminding me of what's waiting on the other side of the sand and smoke. When my commanding officer delivers the news that we're headed home, the relief is almost overwhelming. The mission is complete, and now, so is my time here. As the plane lifts off the runway, I stare out at the receding desert, my thoughts already racing ahead. I'm going home, not just to a place, but to a future I'm finally ready to claim. The plane touches down at the base in the early hours of the morning. The air feels different, cooler, lighter. My boots hit the tarmac, and the weight of the deployment begins to lift. I'm home, not just back in the States, but ready to return to the life waiting for me on the farm. A military van takes me as far as the town's outskirts. From there, I hitch a ride with an old farmer heading in the same direction. He doesn't ask questions, just nods in understanding when he sees my uniform and gives me a lift. By the time we reach the edge of my property, the sun is rising, casting a golden glow over the familiar landscape. What I see takes my breath away. The farm is unrecognizable, in the best way. The barn's roof gleams with fresh tin, the fields are lush and neatly planted, and the fencing stretches unbroken along the perimeter. Even the house looks brighter, with a fresh coat of paint and flower beds blooming along the porch. Rachel's truck is parked out front, and as I walk up the steps, the door swings open. There she stands, her face lighting up with a smile that's equal parts relief and happiness. "You're back," she says, her voice steady, though her eyes glimmer with emotion. I nod, unable to speak for a moment. I didn't expect all this. She steps aside, letting me take in the house. Inside, it's just as transformed. The floors shine, the furniture is polished, and everything feels warm, welcoming. She's thought of every detail, even leaving a cold beer on the counter. "I had help," Rachel says, leaning against the doorframe. "Your grandfather's legacy deserved better than to sit in ruin. So did you." Her words hit me square in the chest, and I can't stop myself from crossing the room to pull her into a hug. She stiffens for a moment, caught off guard, but then her arms wrap around me, holding just as tightly. "Thank you," I whisper, my voice rough with emotion. "For everything." She pulls back slightly, her eyes searching mine. "I didn't do it for thanks, Mark. I did it because I believe in you, in this place, in what you're building." The moment lingers, charged with unspoken feelings. Before I can say anything else, a loud moo interrupts us. We both turn to see one of the cows wandering past the open window, a familiar mischievous gleam in its eye. Rachel laughs, the sound breaking the tension. "Guess that's my cue to get back to work." "I'll help," I say, grabbing my hat from the counter. "After all, I think I owe you a few favors." We spend the day catching up while tending to the animals and checking the fields. Rachel fills me in on the progress she's made and the small challenges she faced. It's clear she's poured her heart into this farm, treating it as if it were her own. By the time the sun sets, we're back on the porch, beers in hand, watching the horizon turn shades of orange and purple. The farm feels alive, thriving in a way I never thought possible. "I'm glad you're back," Rachel says softly, her gaze fixed on the horizon. "Me too," I reply, and for the first time, I truly mean it. In that moment, I know this is where I belong, not just on the farm, but with her. Rachel isn't just part of my life now, she's part of my future. The days pass quickly as I settle back into life on the farm. Rachel and I fall into our familiar rhythm, but there's an unspoken closeness now, something deeper that wasn't there before. It's in the way she laughs a little easier, the way her hand lingers on my arm when she hands me a tool, the way she looks at me when she thinks I'm not paying attention. I can feel the shift, and it's terrifying and exhilarating all at once. For the first time in years, I'm not just thinking about surviving. I'm thinking about the future. One evening, as we sit on the porch watching the stars, I realize I don't want to wait any longer. Rachel deserves to know how much she means to me, how much this farm and this life wouldn't be the same without her. The next morning, I head into town and visit the local jeweler. It's a small shop, the kind where every piece feels like it has a story. The ring I choose is simple but elegant, a single diamond set in a sturdy band. It feels right, like something Rachel would appreciate for its practicality and beauty. When I return to the farm, Rachel is at the creek, her boots off as she dips her toes into the water. She looks up as I approach, a curious smile playing on her lips. "Something on your mind?" she asks, patting the rock beside her. I sit down, my heart pounding in a way that no battlefield ever caused. "Actually, yeah, there is." She raises an eyebrow, waiting. I take a deep breath, pulling the ring box from my pocket. "Rachel, you've been here for me in ways I didn't even know I needed. You've helped me rebuild my life, this farm, and myself. I can't imagine doing any of this without you." Her eyes widen as I open the box, revealing the ring. "I want us to build this life together, not just as partners on the farm, but as partners in everything. Will you marry me?" For a moment, she doesn't say anything, her expression unreadable. Then her eyes fill with tears, and she lets out a shaky laugh. "You really know how to catch a girl off guard, don't you?" "I hope that's a good thing," I say, my voice unsteady. She nods, a wide smile breaking through the tears. "Yes, Mark. Of course, yes." Relief floods through me as I slide the ring onto her finger. She holds up her hand, admiring it in the fading sunlight. "It's perfect," she says, her voice soft. "So are you," I reply, pulling her into a hug. We sit there for a long time, the creek babbling in the background, the stars beginning to emerge overhead. It feels like the start of something new, something bigger than either of us. When we finally head back to the house, Rachel stops me on the porch, her eyes sparkling. "You know, I always thought I'd be on my own, but you've proven me wrong in the best way." "You've done the same for me," I reply, brushing a strand of hair from her face. As we stand there, the farm stretching out around us, I realize that this is more than a happy ending. It's a beginning. Together, we're not just building a farm. We're building a legacy. Years have passed since Rachel said yes on the rock by the creek, and in that time, our lives have grown in ways I never could have imagined. The farm is no longer just a project or a refuge. It's our home, a thriving testament to what we've built together. On a crisp autumn morning, I stand on the porch, coffee in hand, watching our twin sons chase each other through the rows of corn. Their laughter fills the air, mingling with the sounds of the farm. The distant mooing of cows, the rhythmic clucking of chickens, the rustle of leaves in the breeze. Behind me, Rachel steps out, her hair tied back and her eyes alight with the kind of joy that only comes from a life well lived. She wraps an arm around my waist, leaning her head against my shoulder. "Looks like the boys are trying to harvest the corn themselves," she says with a chuckle. I laugh, shaking my head. At this rate, we'll have the youngest farmhands in town. The years have only deepened my appreciation for her strength and warmth. Rachel is everything I could have hoped for and more. A partner, a friend, and the love of my life. Together, we've faced challenges and celebrated victories, always moving forward. Later that day, as the boys nap and the farm quiets, I find myself reflecting on the journey that brought me here. The betrayal I thought would break me, the storm that nearly swept everything away, the moments of doubt and resilience. It all feels like a distant memory, a chapter of a story that no longer defines me. Jessica crossed my mind briefly, but only as a reminder of what I left behind. Word around town is that she's struggling as a single mother, her choices catching up with her in ways she never anticipated. I don't feel anger or bitterness anymore, just a quiet sense of gratitude that her actions led me to this life, to Rachel. That evening, we gather around the dinner table, the boys chattering about their latest adventures as Rachel and I share a knowing smile. The house is warm with the glow of the fireplace, the aroma of roasted vegetables filling the air. It's not just a meal. It's a celebration of everything we've built together. After the boys are tucked into bed, Rachel and I sit on the porch, wrapped in a blanket as the stars come out. She leans against me, her voice soft as she speaks. Do you ever think about how far we've come? Every day, I reply, and I wouldn't change a thing. She looks up at me, her eyes full of the same unwavering determination I saw the day we met. Me neither. As we sit there, the farm stretching out around us, the future feels wide open, filled with possibilities. We've built more than a life. We've built a legacy, one rooted in love, resilience, and the promise of everything yet to come. And for the first time in my life, I feel like I'm exactly where I'm meant to be. Thank you for being part of this journey. If this story resonated with you, share your thoughts or similar experiences in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. Don't forget to like this post and subscribe for more stories of resilience, love, and second chances. Your support helps keep these stories alive.